Hi guys, welcome to the Guitar Hour.
Hello.
We are joined again by Mr. Dave Bronze. He's back.
I'm back.
He's been a very, very, very busy guy. I'll tell you all about it later. I see you've got the. I just noticed you've got the Iona t-shirt on as well.
T-shirt, man. Yeah, given to me by Dave Bainbridge himself today.
All relevant. You'll find out why later. And Dan Smith, obviously.
Hello.
And the usual beer. We're drinking Saltaire Blonde, which is a local brewery to here. It's very, very nice. You've got Oakley Pale Ale.
Oakley Pale, that's alright.
Which is
nice.
just as good. It's just as good, to be fair. So welcome, guys. Also, thank you to Nick Wayland and Sonic Pete for following the stream just before we went live. We did see you follow the stream, so thank you so much for that. I want to start by just introducing this beast, which you will have probably all seen. So this is my new Fibonari. This is the Fibonari Erotic. For obvious reasons, you guys have seen. I'm just going to squeeze my bulbous end. You guys have seen these before because I have the gold top one that sits in the corner over there, which is a completely different kind of guitar. This is basically designed to be a bit like a Strat, basically 3 single coils, a lightweight older body. It's very, very lightweight. Crazy colour, because I wanted a crazy colour, for which I've had equal amounts of love and abuse. I don't care. I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. Matches the t-shirt.
Yeah. Magneto's helmet.
Magneto's helmet colour, yeah, exactly. Really, really beautiful. It's got this metallic kind of finish on, which is a first for Fibonari. They've never done one before. It's kind of similar to one of the JPM, one of the John Petrucci model, the Majesty, I think, the Majesty colours, if I remember rightly. Really, really cool guitar. It's got, yeah, lightweight older body, maple neck with an ironwood fretboard, which is what's on Dan's and my hollow body.
Apparently these make boats out of it. So it's boats on.
Is that what they said? Make
so
boats out of it?
said these to make boats out of it, and it's really good for with like moisture and sort of sea salt and that kind of thing.
Really?
So
Okay.
it's like the best according to him.
I'm just going to turn the gain up on the mic a little bit to get you guys a little bit louder. Yeah, so it's a stunning guitar, locking tuners. It's really, really modern. It's got a 6-screw floating trem. For those who don't know what that means, basically, let me just switch to the webcam. I think it's number 3, or I'll just do it manually. Okay, so for those who've not seen one before, I don't know what I'm talking about. Whoa, if I can actually find it. That is a 6-screw trem, if the camera will focus. That means that you've got 6 screws in there as opposed to 2, so one on either side. So I'll just give you a close-up view of the paintwork. It's actually, would you guys say it was more purple in the room or pink? What do you think?
Yeah, no, purple, yeah.
It's purple,
Yeah.
effectively.
It's not like shocking pink, is it?
Magenta? Is
And then one of the things these guys do, which is really impressive, that Dave just picked up, if you look at that maple strip that runs all the way down the neck, that is in actual fact inside the fretboard. If you look, it's not a maple strip on the outside like binding. Oh, you got a close-up of Dave's shoe. It's focusing on your shoe, Dave. It's more interesting in your Converse. So anyway, you can see it there, guys, if I move away a little bit. And then we've got the TQ logo, obviously, and these offset dots, which is kind of cool. And then Gabor, the guy who makes them, has put, you maybe can't see it on the camera, but the inlays at the 24th fret are actually shaped like a stop sign, as opposed to circles. And his logic was, obviously, you can't go any higher than the 24th fret. So, you know, that means, sorry, make you guys seasick by doing that. That basically is where you have to stop. So yeah, really cool guitar. Really, really like it. It sounds fantastic. 5-way switch with a trick switch here, which basically, I'll maybe demonstrate these sounds later on when we start talking about recording today. Various different sounds, and then a push-pull boost for the bridge pickup as well. So very cool indeed. Dave, what have you been up to?
I've been working really hard for an upcoming tour. I'm doing a tour with Dave Bainbridge, and it's all prog rock stuff. Mixed with kind of Celtic music, so I've been working super hard on that. And today
Stonehenge.
just not quite like that.
Mini Stonehenge.
But yeah, basically we're touring the end of this month, and it's pretty much the hardest music I've ever had to learn. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's just crazy prog, time signatures, all sorts of weirdness going on.
15, 16 and all that kind of stuff. So
We've mentioned Dave Bainbridge before in the stream. Dave is literally, you know, one of a genuine musical genius, I would say.
Yeah,
and also one of life's lovely people.
yeah.
But a genuine musical genius. Plays guitar, keys. What, did he play anything else?
Oh, he plays like
Uilleann pipes or something daft?
no, he doesn't play the Uilleann pipes. No, but yeah, he's world class on keys and world class on guitar,
Yeah.
and so his music. I've been a big fan of his since I started playing guitar. So it's kind of really amazing to be playing those tunes.
And the T-shirt's relevant because of Iona, obviously.
Yeah,
and Dave's name
Iona,
is there. On the
so Iona, kind of a Celtic prog band that have
Fantastic
been around
band.
for a long time. Amazing. So yeah, so I've been super busy.
And I've got to ask about the rather stunning looking guitar you've got there.
This is the Ibanez Universe.
Man, I wanted one of these when I was a kid. I still do.
So yeah, so on the set, one of the songs requires 7-string, so it's all kind of really low down.
Is it 7-string on the album?
I'm not sure. Dave doesn't have a 7-string.
I was going to say, I can't imagine him playing a 7-string.
Yeah, I think for the live we're doing certain things different.
Right.
And some of the bass stuff, because obviously Dave can't play everything live, although he's having a really good go.
I bet he is, yeah.
So I'm just just trying to fatten things out with the 7-string. So it's been nice because I never play this guitar really. So it's been nice to bring out a guitar. And all the covers are missing. Look, all the electronics exposed.
Man, that finish is amazing. It's so cool. And it's signed by Steve as well.
Yeah, that's right.
There we go. It's signed by Steve Vai. Don't know how well you guys can see that, but it is signed authentically. And Dan, you've been pretending to be a trombonist.
this is true. This is not like I don't go on outside boots on a Saturday busking. Tend to be a trombone player. Yeah, back to gigging with the Swing Commanders is sort of standard, and then I've agreed to.
I'm gonna. I'll need you. These saying I need you guys to speak up a little bit because
Oh,
it's really
okay,
quite quiet.
okay.
So, a little bit louder. Shout.
So back to gigging with the Swing Commanders, standard kind of regular gig. Back to teaching in schools a little bit, sort of day job kind of thing, and I've agreed to do this project where I'm playing for. It's actually playing for like a kids book theatre thing, which is supposed to be a trombone player, but the organiser's is having a hard time finding a trombonist. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's definitely
trombonist.
not
Yeah,
a tromboner.
yeah. A tromboner.
So I was like, they said, "Oh, you got a bass?" I was like, "Right, okay." So I've not played bass in about 6 or 7 years. I've just been hung on a wall because you get these things and then
Yeah.
you just don't play them, do you, really? So
Yeah.
So that's to teach myself how to. The actual physical technical thing isn't really that bad. I've had to teach myself how to read a bass clef for in about a week, 2 weeks sort of time.
Show off.
Which it's not that bad. It's that thing of like you start confirming a few notes. You go, right, I definitely know that's an F.
Yeah.
And then you might get another note and you're like, oh, what's that? And then after a while you're like, right, I definitely know that note. And then, but yeah, it's been interesting.
That's quite interesting as well. How you can actually learn, and you learn something a certain way. It's like learning to read English, and then someone shifting all the letters around and expecting you to be able to still do the same thing.
I didn't do that. I've heard some people go talk about bass clef and go, right, well you just move it up.
Oh,
So you
man,
just
I
move it
can't do that.
up.
No, not me.
Well, how do they do it? So they move it down a line.
Yeah, down a line because F is on the top line in treble clef and it's on the second line down in
Yeah.
bass clef.
So they go, well, it's just everything but you move. No, I can't do that.
Well,
That's-
the word "just" is inappropriate there.
Yeah. It's like the modal thing of like
Yeah.
thinking, well, I'm in this key, no, but then I'm going in. You think 3 things to get to the thing that you actually want. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's quite, and this was the same thing with when I was learning lap steel as well. It's quite rewarding to do something from a lower down thing. Like if you a lot more. If you're kind of
What?
bored.
What, sorry, I just got to say, what an interesting username, Grind Universe. You sound like you have a great time in life. Thank you for following.
The thing of if you're quite not far along, but you obviously your first instrument is your first instrument. So when you go something else, the learning curve is the progression's like a lot steeper than it would be.
Of course, yeah.
Because you kind of get stuck, don't you, when you on your own instrument. So then it's like, oh yeah, look how far I've got on this instrument. And then,
Well, I had that with trumpet. When I was in my first year of my jazz degree, I decided I hated guitar and went on to play trumpet and really found it too hard. Because the opposite end of the spectrum is you're still playing guitar when you do bass. Well, you're playing bass, which actually does have its own technical difficulties.
well, it's visual and it's 2 hands and it's
Yeah,
like,
it's very similar.
Because I borrowed a trumpet from the music service and I thought,
You didn't borrow the mouthpiece, did you?
yeah, but I
Did
give
you
it a good
did you
old,
bleach it
give it a
first?
good old rinse.
Good old rinse. Poured some beer down it first.
Yeah, but I think things that are like visual and handsy, I'm alright. Like the mandolin, kind of get round, or
Yeah,
like lap
totally.
steel, I can see where things are.
It's transferable
Piano,
skills.
I don't really have
Mandolin's really easy.
You ever played anything else that's non-string instrument related? You play piano?
that stuff where you can't see the
I
notes.
do play a bit of piano, yeah.
There's a
I'm not
piano
very
there,
good at-
Dave. Oh.
Not very good. I've started playing piano a little bit more now actually, because I did some of the easier keys on my album I played, and then got somebody in to do the more complicated. But I write a lot on the piano actually.
I did, and this could segue as nicely into recording. Dan, if you go behind the guitars over there and grab the U-Rock guitar, which Stelios, my friend Stelios, Infernal GR knows all about. Just don't knock the guitars over, obviously. Just grab the U-Rock guitar. So today we're going to do a big focus on recording and see if we get into any other topics as well. We have a few other things lined up, but as usual, we'll probably only end up talking about this one topic. So what I was going to say was, for any of you guys, a little segue into this recording thing. If you are a guitar player who can't play keys, like me, although I do have a keyboard set up in my studio, I'm going to struggle to plug this in because I didn't think about this beforehand. I should have done and shown you guys how this worked. But also, if I do this, Cubase is going to take over all the audio of my system, because Cubase is quite... it likes to take over all of the audio system on Windows, and I'm using Windows for this stream. But this is a U-Rock guitar. It basically was designed as a toy for Guitar Hero. What's the other one called? Rock Band.
Rock Band.
And there's another one, which I forget
Rocksmith.
the name of, Rocksmith. So it's actually, although it looks and is very plasticky, it's just really, it's not that well made because of the price of it. I think it's about £190, £199 in the UK, so probably around $250 in the US. This is an incredible MIDI controller that you can use to replace keys if you don't play keys. The idea with it is if you touch your finger to any of the strings, you get a MIDI note. There's no pitch to MIDI conversion here. So there are other ways you can do this. You can plug your guitar straight into your audio interface with a cable, standard guitar cable, and use a piece of software called MIDI Guitar. And that will convert your pitch to MIDI data. But there is always going to be some latency because of the nature of pitch to MIDI conversion. With this thing, there is as much latency as you would have with a normal keyboard, i.e. as long as it takes for the light to travel, or the electrons to travel across the cable that you've got it plugged into. And this just plugs in via USB. There's no drivers to install. It's what they call class compliant. And I use this for my album for the demos, because I don't want to use it for the actual album, because very amazing keyboard player Alex Argento is going to be playing keys. But for all the solos, sorry, I'm totally covering your face there, Dave. You can't see Dave.
Right.
There we go. Yeah, I did all the keyboard solos for my album for the demo of all the tracks using this, and they sound pretty authentic. Although what's really interesting is Alex said to me, I thought they sounded like keyboard solos, and Alex said immediately, no, you can't use those, they sound nothing like a keyboard player. The lines are fine, but I can tell it's not a keyboard player, which I found really interesting. He obviously, because he knows the kind of shapes and patterns that keyboard players play, he knew immediately it was a guitar. But that thing is fantastic. Check out U-Rock guitar. The only thing I've got that's different is if I take the neck off, which maybe yes, there we go. Right, I'm going to show you the close-up of this neck. This is what they call the radius neck, and then we'll get into recording. I really should have set my keyboard up better so I could do this more easily. This neck, you will see the frets get smaller as you go towards the head. Towards the guitar end or the body end. So from the headstock down, the frets are obviously getting smaller. Now you may be thinking, "Hi Theos, thank you for following the stream." You may be thinking, yeah, but that's what a normal guitar does, so what? Well, the original one of these did not do that. It was all the frets were the same distance apart. A little bit like, do you guys remember the Synthax?
Yeah.
A little bit like the Synthax towards that Alan Holdsworth made famous.
What's the thing that the guy from... Hey!
Thanks for following, Levi.
Better late than
We know
never,
Miss Teresa. Yeah, what you not followed already for? Anyway, what were you saying?
There's a band and they do kind of like that sort of dancey rock stuff, and the guy plays something that's like, it kind of looks like this, yeah, but it's like it feels like it looks like physical keys rather than.
Yeah, there's the Zetar as well.
Right.
The Zetar has got tiny little buttons that you press.
The band.
P.
I think so. Go on, carry on. This is bad radio.
The Pointer Sisters. I have no idea.
The other, I've actually got in the car. I've got a Roland MIDI synth. Should have brought it up.
I've got one in that corner over there that sits there and does nothing because it's fairly useless.
Yeah, which one have you got?
The GR 30.
Oh, I've got probably a slightly new one. Than
No,
that.
the GR20. Sorry,
All
the
right.
little one.
Yeah, so mine's in the foot pedal. I actually do occasionally use it. There is latency, but for doing like pads and keyboardy things like that, sometimes pretty useful. I was going to use it on the tour actually,
Right.
for playing the odd thing.
Using the sounds on board.
No, probably to trigger one of Dave's keyboards.
Because that was where I found there were big problems, and I think Stelios has found. I think me and Stelios have talked about MIDI guitar a lot. When I triggered Omnisphere or Trillion using the GR20 with the MIDI out,
Yeah.
there was unacceptable amounts of latency.
Oh really? Oh,
Whereas using the onboard sounds, it was fine. Now, which one have you got?
Yeah, I've got
It's
a
not the
rubbish-
55, is it? It's not the newer one.
It's not the super new one. It's about maybe, I don't know, 6-7 years old now.
Maybe yours has got a more powerful system in it. That's
Yeah,
mine was the
latency's
cheap one.
not too bad, but
Again, it
it
depends.
is what it is.
Some people experience latency in different ways, and we can talk about that when we talk
yeah,
about recording.
Yeah, for playing your Crazy Legato stuff, I suppose.
Well, the other thing was for playing that stuff, because when you're doing legato, you're not picking every single note, and the synths will tend to interpret this kind of the hammered notes as bends. So you get pitch bend data as opposed to note triggering. Whereas this thing interprets that, you can switch that off and interpret them as note on data. Anyway, I thought that might be quite interesting for you guys who are interested in playing synth sounds on your albums or demos or whatever it is that you're doing. The U-Rock guitar is a very cheap way of getting very, very good MIDI. The same as using a keyboard, essentially. Very, very good.
Have you tried the one where you can just plug a jack in, you get a box, is it Sonos?
Sonos, yeah.
Have you tried that? 'Cause I've seen people.
Yeah, I've
use
got
that.
one somewhere. It's in one of these drawers. They gave me one when I was doing some demoing for them at NAMM, and it's very good.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. So.
Again, the cool thing about that, feel free to stick some links in as well in the if you want to. You don't feel pressured to, but if you want to stick some links into their website or whatever. The nice thing about the Sonos, again, it's class compliant, so there's no drivers. So you plug your guitar. It's a little box about this big. You plug your guitar in one end, USB cable into the computer on the other, and it's an automatic MIDI interface that is kind of built into your computer essentially, and you can trigger anything in Logic or Cubase or whatever. So that's the MIDI side of things. 06817, thank you for following the stream, we really appreciate it. So, recording.
Audio.
Big topic. Audio, not MIDI, we're talking about audio now.
Yeah.
Dave, you've just finished your amazing album.
Thank you very much.
And had a huge number of compliments about both the writing and arranging and guitar playing, but also it sounds bloody fantastic.
Yeah.
So I guess we thought it would be a good idea to talk through your recording setup, my recording setup, how things are done for guitar, different options. Dan, tell us about the project you're going to be doing fairly soon that's related to this.
Yeah, I've got to record an album with the Swing Commanders, which we're going to Blueprint Studios in Manchester, which is where I think they've done their last 2 albums. It'll be the first one I've done with them.
Right.
So it's I mean you can contest to this, like in terms of like recording and gear and stuff, I'm like the least knowledgeable guy.
You're getting into it though.
I'm getting into it a bit, but the thing is I've never really needed to do it that much. I think it goes hand in hand with people that are writing their own stuff and have the need to kind of write, to have somewhere to put it.
Yeah,
Whereas I've never really been that kind of guy.
Or people who
Sort of
maybe
writes.
work for a company where you need to do backing tracks or something.
Yeah, but again, I'm getting into that. I've kind of got to join the. Follow a city. This is great.
Yeah, Zap Rosedale, thank you so much for joining the stream and following.
But yeah, the joining the ranks of the kind of modern thing, because it's.
Buying all the gear.
I'd rather wait until I have a reason to have it than, because it's an expensive hobby. It's
crazy. Well, these days it's way less expensive than it used to be.
Well, this is a good
certainly
angle. I
is
can be
expensive.
the Alan Davis in this scenario, because you can. It's easier to speak to you guys, and you can sort of go. You can go straight to the good gear pool. Whereas if you're on your own, you'd be looking around and you're not buying any old bit of shit, can't you?
For those that don't know, Alan Davis is a UK comedian who sits on one of these comedian We have these comedian panel shows in the
Well,
UK.
it's essentially it's on QI. He is kind of the reason QI is good.
That's true.
Because without him, it could zone off into the sort of highbrow, and he's kind of the guy that asks questions to make it okay for you to ask questions.
Yeah, he
Does that make sense?
feigns stupidity.
Yeah, he's not stupid at all. He's a
Yeah.
very clever guy, but
Yeah.
you know, he's kind of.
So you are in a way feigning stupidity. You're not stupid, but it's a lack of experience for you. It's like you're not.
I've just never needed to sort of do
Absolutely,
it.
absolutely.
I've just always.
So this will be interesting for you in terms of.
Player rather than
Yeah, well, I think people think you have to go on a degree and a course and all this stuff, but you know, like, I've never studied it, but I just started recording my own music, and you go into studios and you just ask questions, and if you're recording and writing music and going into studios, you just learn it, and that's it. And you'll make mistakes, but it's just like what Dan's saying. It's like, you know, I've learned stuff by just doing it.
And you don't need massively expensive gear these days. I mean, we're
No.
going to show you some gear that is relatively expensive because that's, you know, what we've got at the moment. But you don't need expensive gear. I mean, the sound card that I gave to you, the Focusrite Sapphire DSP 24,
Yeah.
24 DSP, they retail. You can pick up a Focusrite interface, which is a fantastic interface with really good preamps for the money. For £160 probably, £160 to £300 will get you a decent interface with 2 or 3, maybe 4 inputs, everything you need. You're going to be looking at a little bit more high-end gear today because that's what we have got. I can't remember what you use, but we'll get into it in a minute.
Yeah.
You've got Motu stuff, right?
I've got a Motu sound card, and and I've got the Two Notes Torpedo Live, but I'll go and grab it in a second.
Yeah, we've got a couple of Two Notes things to sort of talk you through because you've got 2 of them, haven't you? You've got 2 separate units.
Yeah, so I've got the reamping box, which is the Torpedo Reload, and I've got the Torpedo Live. So both cool units.
So some of you guys may know loads about this, some of you may not, some of you may be completely new to it and wanting to get into it. The most traditional method is an amp, one of these, which is an SM57, a mic cable, an audio interface with some kind of mic preamp on, of whatever quality. You don't need an insanely good mic preamp to use an SM57.
No point.
You don't need phantom power, which is some mics, condenser mics and ribbon mics need phantom power.
You do if you're going to put vocals on though, probably.
Yeah, that's true. With a guitar cab, because it's really loud, usually in the room, you don't need any phantom power. You just plug this straight into your audio interface, set the gain to the appropriate level, stick this in front of your cab, and we'll talk about placement in front of speakers and stuff shortly, I guess.
Yeah, so because I'm the rock guy, most rock recordings recorded in the last however many years that are used in just one of those SM57. And then there's another one which is the Sennheiser MD421. And what they tend to do is the SM57 captures like all the trebly kind of the attack of the sound, and the Sennheiser MD421 captures like the mid-range and the bass really well. And what you tend to do is they'll use 2 on the cab. So the way I do it is for lead sounds I have the SM57 straight on and then the MD421 at an angle, and the combination of the 2 sounds really, really cool. So
the thing with miking up a cab is, first of all, especially if you're using a tube amp, you need to, although this is not always the case these days when lots of guys, myself included, tend to use lots of preamp gain rather than power amp gain. However, Dave, that's not what Dave does, so this is interesting. You need the amp quite loud in the room. So first of all, you need to have somewhere where you can actually crank the amp and then stick a mic in front of it.
yeah.
I'm quite different to Dave in many ways because I don't like an SM57 shoved in front of a cab, even with the Sennheiser or another mic. Because I'm not a rock player and I like a very smooth sound with less attack, especially for legato stuff. And what I find works best for me is to use a different system altogether with no mics. However, before we shift away from mics and get into other setups that you can use, let me talk a little bit about ribbon mics.
Yeah.
Because if you're a guy like me who doesn't like the sound of an SM57 in front of a cab, although for clean sounds I quite like it, for overdriven sounds for me I'm not that big a fan. Although some guys who play the same style as me with that smooth legato thing really like the sound of an SM57. But the SM57, so you described the sound as like quite a spiky, lots of attack, lots of top end. It's not subtle, is it?
It's a super aggressive.
Yeah.
So I mean, essentially, SM57s are kind of quite bad sounding mics, but it's
Yeah.
because that's what's been used
Yeah.
since forever. It's become the standard. So yeah.
And actually, speaking about that, there's a really interesting phenomenon. A friend of mine, a guy called James Santiago, who runs Voodoo Labs. You guys may know their power supplies and various other pedals they do. When I was in upstate New York with at the Dweezilla Zappa's summer camp, James did a really interesting session on, basically he's got a lot of the master tapes from old AC/DC recordings and I think some Queen recordings and various other things. So he's got the original tapes, or the files maybe of the original tapes, so he can isolate all the guitar parts. And what's really interesting, he took AC/DC, I think it was Back in Black.
Oh, you told me this.
Yeah.
We had breakfast in Budapest and stuff.
Oh, did I? How bizarre.
Like AC/DC's great.
Oh yeah, I
song
remember in that
randomly.
cafe. Yeah, I remember telling you about it. If you take the isolated guitars, of which there's two on the main rhythm guitar track, and you take, let's say, the right hand channel, on its own it sounds horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, truly horrendous. Raspy, way too much top end, no bottom end at all. Not a lot of it's a very fizzy sound, way too much definition. If you take the left hand, let's say, they weren't mixed that way, they weren't panned hard left and right, but whatever they were panned, again, on its own it sounded horrible. Totally woolly bottom end, just horrible bass heavy, a lack of definition in the top end. Both tones individually, you would have thought, there's no way we can put this on a record. And then when they were combined, they sounded huge and amazing.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that you do this sound layering thing, don't you? Where it's not necessarily just one sound.
So on the album, one thing that surprised me is one thing I did is recorded with SM57, MD421, and then did like an amp sim. So I had 3 options.
Right.
And sometimes the sound that sounded best on its own, when you put it in the mix, sounded terrible, and you ended up like using like something like the MD421 and the amp sim just because it sounded somehow bigger. So that was a really good thing I learned in terms of, not being prejudiced about it, but just really put it to the mix. I mean, to be fair, the other thing is that Dave Bainbridge mixed the album anyway in the end. So that's a different issue which we'll probably talk about later. Should you mix your own albums?
Well, I'm not mixing mine, so I wouldn't dare.
So.
But the other option that you've got is a ribbon mic. And what ribbon mics do is they have a cut-off at around 8K?
I can't
Maybe
remember.
it's less than that even.
It depends on the model, I think.
So they'll vary, but generally an SM57 has a very high frequency response, so it responds on a fairly wide frequency range. A ribbon mic has a roll-off on the top end. You'll see some mics where you've got a bass roll-off, like the mic I'm using here is an SE Electronics SE3 mic, and it's a condenser mic, and it's got a pad so you can roll off the bottom end. Usually not so much the top end, I don't think.
I know you get, with a condenser mic, the power gives it a lot more clarity at the high end.
Yeah. So with the ribbon mic, you've got this top end roll off. What that does for you is it gives you a smoother sound, which some people love. Personally, I absolutely adore it. I think it gives me more of the sound I hear in the room with my ears, as opposed to the sound of an SM57 sort of shoved in front of the speaker. And I prefer it. A lot of guys use, for smoother guitar sounds, an SM57 and a ribbon mic of some type, like a Royer R101 or a Royer R121, but there's various different mics. You don't have to spend a fortune, but they really, really give you get what you pay for with ribbon mics.
Yeah, I've got a cheap one and it's not great.
Yeah. You can get some cheap Chinese ones that sound okay, like a friend of mine.
I've got a
uses
T-Bone mic from Thomann that's okay. I use
Is it a ribbon?
Yeah, it's a ribbon one, and it's good for sort of percussion and capturing that low end. But it's got that smooth thing. I mean, because ribbon mics quite vintage. The first mics were ribbon mics, so yeah.
The only other thing with them is they're not all like this. For instance, SE Electronics have got the VR2 or the VR1, I forget which one it is, that doesn't exhibit that top end roll off so much. But most people like that characteristic. The other problem with them is you need a really good preamp to use them. And what I mean by that is because they require usually a lot of gain to use. And that if you've got bad preamps, the preamp will hiss when the gain is cranked. So you need good preamps. So they're not a solution that is going to be a cheap solution for you. If you want to record mic'd guitar amps on the cheap SM57 and
I mean,
the Sennheiser.
the best mic I've bought for an all-rounder, not so much for electric guitar, but for, you know, a mic that'll do vocals, acoustic guitar, like live recordings, is the AKG C414.
Yeah, I love that amp.
And
that mic. I
you
love
can
it.
pick them up on eBay for really good prices now. And it's one of those mics, it just sounds good straight away. You don't have to noodle with it and mess with it, especially on acoustic guitar.
Now those
Sounds great.
remind me, £500-600 new.
Yeah, but I picked up mine for about $250 second
Wow.
hand.
That's a bargain.
And it's like, once you get a mic like that, you just keep it for the rest of your life because it's just great.
I'm actually desperate. When we record all the Lick Library demos with the 414, actually, on mic'd up on a cab, and well, I think we do anyway. We've certainly got a 414 at Lick Library, and it's a great sounding mic, really good for guitars. That's a condenser mic, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's like, you see them a lot in studios. Somebody's asking, have you tried micing up the back of the cab when it's open and then putting an SM57 at the front?
No, but when we get into impulse responses,
Do that on Wall of Sound 3.
yeah, and I do it on the Axe effects as well.
Yeah.
I can maybe try and demonstrate that with the Axe. Oh, well, it's going to be difficult actually because we're using a single mic for to pick up the sound, but I can maybe try and demonstrate that, or at least talk you through the way I've set the Axe effects up for recording.
I think that's where impulse responses are really great. I mean, that's why I love the 2 notes Wall of Sound 3 thing, because you can just move the mic around, you can put it at the back of the cab, you can do
absolutely.
different cabs,
It's
so
amazing.
and that's what I used on the record. So once I got my
Welcome to the stream, S3 Bastion18. Thank you so much for following us.
Yeah, so what I did is, once I got my amplified sound I was really happy with, then blending in loads of different options is just, the power of that's fantastic.
That is genuinely new to me. I have recorded using mics and I've recorded using impulse responses, and we'll get into what they are and the way you can use them and how you can record without mics shortly. But I've never blended them. That's really interesting.
Because I thought you can get like the sound in the room.
issues.
You can get phase issues, but you can just move the mic around until with the least. But the one way I used the Wall of Sound 3 is like, if I close mic'd my amp, which I did, but I wanted it to sound a bit bigger, the sound of the room, I used the impulse response to get the sound of the room, so with the mic really far off.
Wow.
And obviously you wouldn't have that super loud, so that kind of avoids the phase issues as well.
Of course, yeah.
The other thing you can do is, once you record it, you can move the waveforms so they all line up.
Yeah. Avoiding phase issues.
Which is another way around it.
Bumblefoot video where he's talking about that.
Yeah.
There's a I think it's quite old now, but he was recording like 2 albums ago or something. He did like a video blog. He did one about something to do with drums as well, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
What, in terms of mic placement and phase issues?
He did a phase thing, and he was talking about reamping and stuff like that. And then he did one where he was talking about something to do with slowing down a certain thing on drums so that the tempo doesn't change, but the drums sound like instead of like.
Okay.
But it's not out of time, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting bit. They're on there somewhere, but they're on YouTube somewhere.
We should probably say what phase issues are. So what happens when you've got 2 mics and there's phase issues? The volume drops basically, because what happens is a speaker is going backwards and forwards like that, yeah. And if you get something out of phase, the speaker can't move backwards and forwards at the same time, so it stays in the middle. And that happens like at certain frequencies when you combine mics to do with the time delay, and it can be quite annoying because it can really ruin your sound. You've got a great tone, and all of a sudden you like, it sounds really thin. So that's kind of
so
what
from
I'm talking about.
The sounds hitting the max at slightly different times.
Slightly different times,
and then it sort of cancels each other out.
But even milliseconds can actually, if you imagine a waveform, if one waveform is going up and then the next waveform is slightly late and goes up at the same time, like Dave's saying, the speaker can't compensate for both waveforms basically.
Yeah.
So you get phase issues where like he says, the volume drop, the tone changes as well.
Right. Yeah.
You tend to get a thin, nasally, horrible kind of sound from phase issues, which you won't necessarily, like if you watch the latest Wampler podcast, what's it called? Chasing Tony. They do a thing where they're miking up they've got stereo set up with 2 cabs, and they mic the cabs separately, and in the room it's quite hard to hear any phase issues if they do exist, because you can have phase issues between 2 cabs as well, especially if you have like Brian Wampler was saying, JFET drive pedals will flip the phase of your signal. So you've got one in phase, one out of phase, and you'll get a complete lack of volume and a complete lack of tone. But you don't necessarily hear it so much in the room because the sound is bouncing off all the walls, and the scenario is far more complex in a real world scenario. But for recording, when you've got a mic, one mic shoved up against the grill cloth and another mic further away, you're picking a snapshot of sound that hits the mic, so it's not as complex a scenario for your ears. So the phase issues are picked up much more easily. So you've got to be a little bit careful of that. Someone else was asking, I think, do we ever mic up the room with a condenser mic?
And how do you pick attack or...
to get the sound of the room? I think as
Yeah.
well, which here I definitely don't, because this room sounds bloody awful.
I've tried that, and that's why I started using the amp sims. Firstly, because it's more flexible, and secondly, because I get traffic noise and
Same here.
and stuff rattling,
Helicopters,
and
dogs barking.
Small children.
police trying
Kids.
to break into my house. That kind of stuff. A joke. The sound, unless you're recording in a great room, then that's probably out. On that, there's a few things I wouldn't record at home, and vocals are one of them. I'd always go to a studio to do that.
Yes, same here. Vocals and drums.
Vocals and drums do it in a studio. It's just not worth the hassle of trying to do it at home.
Yeah, everything else. The problem with drums is that you need many mics, and most people don't have audio interfaces that many mics on a budget, because we've got to be conscious that we're not, we don't want to just talk about super high-end gear and having tons of mics and lots of options available to you. However, obviously these days, as opposed to recording guitars, there are so many phenomenal sounding drum plugins.
Right.
They're instantly recognisable though, that's the problem.
I use Stephen Slate drums, and what I did for the album is we recorded all the hi-hats and cymbals and stuff live, and I used a digital kit for a lot of the drum sounds, and then layered the kicks and snares with Slate drums.
Right.
To get a bigger sound, but I thought it sounded so good that I'd be inclined to record real drums next time, all real, but then layer with Stephen Slate drums.
Which is a very common thing to do, especially in the metal scene. That's done a lot,
Yeah.
isn't it? Record a real kit and then stick sample drums on top for fattening up the sound. So, if you are miking up a cab, you just need to be careful if you're using two mics in terms of phase, and the way you can avoid that, there's a few ways actually. You can either have them both up against the grill cloth so they're the same distance apart, or you can, one way is to use your ears and stick a pair of headphones on and play whilst someone moves the mics around until they come into phase with each other, or you can flip the phase on the preamp.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, it does. It's a bit complicated to explain here. So, if you do a Google search for avoiding phase issues, there's loads of clever little things you can do.
Loads of YouTube videos as well.
The other way you could do is do it the way we do it, Tom, with a torpedo reload.
Yeah. Let me grab it.
Hey.
I love it, Dave. Let me grab my torpedo reload.
So
Please don't say grab your torpedo.
How rude. So the torpedo reload is a reamp box, and you can play through your actual amp, and it's like a DI. So the computer, you can record the DI straight from the box, and then you could record the cab as well. But then you can play it back through.
It's dusty.
And amp it through a proper amp. So it's taking your original DI signal.
Oh, it's upside down. Sorry.
Yeah, I've used this before. So it'll take your original guitar DI.
No, it's
upside down.
For crying out loud, sorry guys. It's a bit weird doing this with the webcam. There we go.
Play it through your amp and your pedals, and you can move the mics around to record it if you want. Do it with your headphones on, because obviously you don't have the guitar in your hands. The guitar sound is coming back through your sequencer, and this torpedo reload is pretty much the only box that does this in the way that it does it, and it's. I couldn't live without it now. It's well worth the money.
It's phenomenal. On the back panel, just so you can see where everything goes, the way I set this up, and I don't know if Dave and I do it exactly the same way, there's only so many ways you can do it. I plug my guitar into the... Now, I don't do reamping yet, so what I do is I plug my guitar straight into the amp. Pardon? Yes, please, that would be great, because then I can point. Okay, so I plug my guitar straight into the amp, I then use a speaker cable to plug the output of the speaker on the amp into the speaker in, okay, and select the right ohms. I then have the option of running the load box output, which is the signal from the amp and the preamp and the power amp of the amp before it goes to the speaker. Okay, so I can take this signal and I can then send it direct to my sound card, so my Apollo UA Audio Apollo, via an XLR cable, and then my audio interface or sound card is receiving the preamp and power amp signal combined of the amplifier, and then I can use speaker simulation in my DAW, so Cubase or Logic, to simulate the speaker, okay, and the mic actually as well, because they tend to do that as well. Now, other things you can do, you can DI if you plug into the front of the unit, on the front here, there is an input, okay, guitar input, instrument in. You can actually plug into there and then send the signal to your amplifier and send the direct signal to your sound card as well for reamping later on, and there's various different features for that. And it's a phenomenal attenuator as well. It really, you know, you can do completely silent recording with this if you want to. So this box is phenomenal. It's, do you know how much they are, Dave? Can you remember?
To be honest,
I don't know how much they are either, I'm afraid.
What I'd say is they're not super,
That's cool.
they're not
Switch
super
back to-
cheap. But if you
Cheers,
think
Dan.
of the time it saves you in the studio, the flexibility it gives you, then it's earned its money. If
Absolutely.
you think you're going to spend, what, £200 a day in a studio? Something like that. And basically I did all my lead parts in a day just with one reamp. The other thing it's great because the neighbours, because it means I lined up all the tracks and just blasted them through in one go, so the neighbours didn't have 12 hours of me doing countless millions of takes.
Absolutely.
So, you know.
Alternatively, if you are not reamping, you can do everything silently and monitor with a pair of headphones on. You can use your, we'll talk about speaker simulation impulse responses in a minute and what they are, but you can use a speaker simulation monitor through that. There'll be a little bit of latency depending on how fast your computer is and what sound card you've got, but generally these days the latency can be very, very minimal indeed. You're talking around, with my sound card I can get the latency down to about 5 milliseconds, which if you notice that, you are some kind of freak. There's no way you're going to notice.
You get more of the delay if you put the mic over here or something.
Absolutely, yeah. You get more delay like standing on a stage and playing a note,
Yeah.
and you're, you know, from the sound coming out of your amplifier and hitting your ears. The average sound card, like your Focusrite, you can probably get the milliseconds down to about 11 to 20 milliseconds, which is more than like copable with. You won't notice that latency too much. Latency being the amount of time between you hitting the note and then hearing the note through your headphones or speakers, okay? Because it's got to go through a lot of processing. It's got to go into... Welcome, Leo ZP. Thank you for following the stream. This is like Follower Central. What's going on?
Right.
This is great. Yeah, thank you, guys. So yeah, the time it takes for you to actually hit the note and then hear it, because the signal has to be processed through, first of all, the amplifier, then it has to get on a cable into your sound card, then your computer has to figure out what that, you know, go through the speaker simulation software, whatever plugin you're using, and then it's got to come out back to your headphones. And it's a very fast process, but it inevitably introduces latency. But then latency is introduced just by the signal going down your cable and out the speaker, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. We're not going to get into the technical details of how to reduce latency and stuff. It's too much, but maybe I might do a separate kind of stream on that at some point, just when I've got some time. My settings in Cubase and Logic and that kind of thing, if anybody's interested. So that's the reload. We'll talk about impulse response in a second, because I want to talk about the Axe effects. Man, can I even say that? Baco Ray Del Universo, thank you so much for following the stream, and thanks for having an amazing username. That's incredible.
Deco King of the Universe, that means.
Amazing. Is it Spanish?
Yeah.
Deco King of the Universe. So we've had Grinder Universe, or Grind, whatever it was, and then...
It's the guitar, it's inspiring.
Absolutely. Welcome anyway. Thank you so much for joining the stream. So the other option you've got, and this is something that's very, very common these days, are amp modelers, which basically allow you to have the entire signal chain in one, no external software required, and you either record via USB, in case of the Axe effects, you can do that, and I use the Axe effects for all of my recordings. I never mic up an amp, ever. Although I do record from time to time the Laney through the reload. And that's why I've got the Reload. I also got it for attenuating amps that I use as well if I need to. But that's if I want to specifically record something with an amp for a particular reason, if I've found a particular tone that I would like to record with. But generally I'll record everything with the Axe-Fx. So the amp modelers, I'm sure you guys know, they basically model the sound of an amplifier and the entire signal chain. So preamp, power amp, all the effects, and then the microphone and the cab, speaker and microphone, basically straight into your digital audio workstation, so Cubase, Logic, whatever you're using, either via USB or via XLR cables or jack cables, whatever you're using. I just have a pair of XLR cables plugged into my audio interface, and that's what Dan and Dave are plugged into at the moment. They're plugged into the Axe-Fx. Every recording I've ever made in the last 3 or 4 years has been done with the Axe-Fx. Every recording that's going to be released anyway. Just because it's incredibly convenient, sounds great, and the really big thing is the sound that you are playing, you're hearing and monitoring, is exactly what's going to be on the record. Whereas we were talking earlier on about if you mic a cab up, so you might explain this better than me probably, but I'll just briefly sort of mention how I feel about it. If I mic a cab up, I hear the cab in the room because I don't have a control room. I have to mic my cab up in the same room that I'm playing in, and then monitor with headphones the track that I'm playing to if I mic up a cab. If you have an ISO booth or if you have a control room in a real studio, then this is not an issue, because the sound that you hear in the monitors is the mic'd up sound that you've got in the ISO booth or in the studio room, the live room. For me, I have to monitor the sound from the amplifier. Now that sound I'm hearing is not going to be what I hear when I've recorded this sound, because I'm recording this little bit of the speaker that I've stuck the mic in front of. My ear is hearing, I've got two speakers in my cab, my Laney Lionheart 20 watt combo. I've got 2 speakers, they're 2 different speakers as well, so I'm hearing completely different sounds than when I'm recording, and that might feel really comfortable when I play but sound awful when I record back. My only option is to monitor with headphones on and I can still hear the cab, and at that point the sound that fits on the record might not be the most comfortable one to play with.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't get that issue with the Axe-Fx.
I think because I make my own amps, obviously I was kind of quite keen to use my amps on the recording, and a lot of time's gone into kind of getting that sound, my sound, as through the amp.
And you use power tube distortion
and I use
a lot.
power tube distortion, being a bit of a Van Halen fan and all that. Rock, I'm the rock guy.
Absolutely.
But it's experience, man. It's like, as you know, when you play live, some of the sounds that sound great at home with loads of top end, you get out live and turn it up, and you want to back off the treble and back off the bass, and some of that is recording's the same thing. As you get, I've been recording my amp so long now, I kind of know instinctively like what the room where I record, which is my living room, it's going to sound like. So I'll just drill the hole in the wall and put some mic cables through. Yeah. And just
that's extreme. Don't do that.
So so I've got my studio, and then I drilled the hole through, run some mic cables.
So you created a live room essentially.
Yeah. So because of what you're talking about, because I just couldn't. yeah. The drill bit's about this long. It's
Jesus.
So yeah, but I totally relate to the convenience of the Axe-Fx, but I'd say that the more trial and error you do, and the better you get it. And that's when you go to a studio with a studio engineer. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for a guy who's tried a million things.
Absolutely.
And he knows like that what's going to work, whereas it probably take you weeks of experimenting.
And
there's
there's
a lot of dollar in, trying a lot of different things out and having the equipment. And
there's a lot of dollar in drilling a hole in your wall.
Oh, true, yeah.
Depending, but that experimentation process is equally fun and equally frustrating, but you learn a huge amount by doing it.
Yeah.
And also you learn a lot about gear.
Wrong,
You learn what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And I've gone through tons of recording gear over the years, and settled on stuff that works for me. But I don't think it matters too much what you've got.
No, it's definitely. I mean, we've talked about this before. It's definitely using the stuff you've got to the best, effect. Because the stuff we have now is miles better than what the guys like the Beatles had and all those Motown records. We have better gear than they do, and yet those recordings sound amazing.
Well, to give you a slightly more updated version of that, and I won't mention the 2 people I know who've done this. I know 2 very prominent guitar players who, and this is just to give you an idea, you don't need an Axe FX. I won't tell you who they are, but because they would wring my neck. But two very prominent guitar players who've recorded incredible albums. Two players who are very, very known for their tone as well. They're instantly recognisable for their tone. Who recorded their entire albums on pods.
Oh, I've got to know this. Yeah,
well, don't even try and predict who it is, because you'll see I can't stop my face from kind of like, it's like that thing of, you know, if you ask someone if they did something and they didn't, you still go, you know, you make a face, but don't try and predict who it is, because they will kill me. But I know two very prominent guitar players with amazing tone who recorded their entire albums on, and more than one album as well, on pods. So there's a lot of kind of
This is whatever works.
EQing. Yeah, it's a lot about touch and stuff like that.
Aristocrats DVD.
No.
Because there's like a bit where they're talking about. I think they all write three or four tunes each. Three.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who it was.
And they asked they asked Guthrie what
They're asking him how do they like. Marco Miniman's got like this proper studio thing, and he's doing all these drums and that, recording everything. And then, what's the bass player called?
Brian Miller.
I think he records on one of those little Boss. You know, do you know which ones I mean? With like, it's like all the
Yeah.
faders on
Boss
it.
thing.
Yeah. Which is like, I think they had one of them at my high school,
Yeah.
and that was like, you know, a cutting edge bit of kit at the time. And he records all this stuff on there, and then like sends that over.
Yeah.
And these are like serious musicians, you know.
You know Cy King. Cy King,
Yeah.
my mate, who's just an incredible musician. I don't know if...
I don't think of that. So.
Absolutely amazing. He's got a Zoom unit that works on the same principle. He doesn't use a computer to do his recordings. He just records into a multi-track Zoom unit. Standalone unit. So it can be done. Again, you know, he creates some incredible recordings. It's all about knowing the gear that you've got and making
using
the
your
most
ears
of it.
and playing
Using your
in
ears.
time. I'll say playing in time.
Being in tune.
Being in tune.
Being in tune, playing in time, looking after your instruments, looking after your gear. I'm the worst for that. But yeah, what you use, just make, like these days, you know, we've been rabbiting on about this for ages. YouTube is your friend. You know, there's so much good information on recording on YouTube. You could learn almost everything you need to know about recording on YouTube without spending a penny on
I mean, even
tutorials.
things like Photoshop tutorials.
That's where
like
I've learned
all
all of my Photoshop skills and Premiere skills and Final Cut Pro skills on YouTube.
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
a lot
I
of stuff on there.
think if I had one piece of advice to say, don't wait till you're good enough, just get recording. Just record.
I should listen to you, Dave, because I'm the worst for that.
Yeah, just get going.
However, my stuff is moving forwards, and I got bass tracks, and I'm going to play them. Unfortunately for you guys, after we finish streaming, I'm going to play Dave some stuff. Sorry about that, but until the lead guitars are recorded, you're not hearing it.
Richard Lane God wants to know, wouldn't you use the Reload and the Wall of Sound 3 instead, Tom?
Absolutely. The reason I use instead of, does he mean instead of the Axe FX? It's going to take about a minute and a half to get an answer to that question. If you mean instead of the Axe FX, then yeah, you could absolutely do that. Wall of Sound 3 is amazing. You don't have to use Wall of Sound 3 as well, although that comes with the Reload. Cab Lab by Fractal Audio is a phenomenal impulse response plugin. By the way, impulse responses are, in layman's terms, because I don't really know the technical terms, they work on a technology called convolution technology, which was originally used in reverbs, where they would go out back in the day when digital reverbs were really, really, really expensive. They invented this technology called convolution technology, where they would essentially sample a room using a sine wave or white noise. And in real layman's terms, convolution technology works out that if, say with a reverb signal, if the white noise sounds like this in that space, what does a guitar signal sound like? Or what does a drum snare sound like? So on and so forth. There's lots of maths involved. If you want to read up on convolution technology, it's very interesting, but lots of physics and maths involved. Now, for you and me, that's a good thing, because it means that someone figured out that if you can do that with a room for reverb signals, or reverb kind of echoes and the way reverb works, you can do it with a guitar signal as well. You can put a mic in front of a cab and through a particular preamp, and then run a sine wave or some white noise. The reason they use those is because the white noise and sine waves are very consistent in terms of their waveform. They don't have irregularities in the waveform, so they're very predictable. So somebody figured out if you run a sine wave or white noise through a guitar cab with a particular mic, a particular point on the speaker through a particular preamp, you can then sample that as what's called an impulse response, and then you can use convolution technology to simulate that same speaker, mic, preamp setup and the position of the speaker, which, by the way, to address what was said previously, could be in front of the speaker or behind the cab as well.
Yeah.
There's plenty of impulse responses that are behind the cab. And on all of my Axe-Fx patches, every single one of them, I use 2 impulse responses. One is a matchless, because the fact that it says matchless in front of it is completely irrelevant. I scrolled through until I found one I liked, and it was a matchless 2x12. It's one of the red wires ones. And then I use the same impulse response from the back of the cab. And the reason I like it is because it gives me more bottom end, it gives me a tighter bottom end sound, and also it sounds more like the cab in the room, which is what I like. I don't like one of the things that people sometimes have with impulse responses, there's a thing called, when you run impulse responses in an amp modeler, you don't run them necessarily through a guitar amp, you run them through what's called full range speakers, or PA speakers is another way of thinking about it. Part of the problem people have is 99.9% of the time when you play guitar, you are hearing a guitar cab in a room. You don't listen to the sound of the speaker with your ear right up against a point on the speaker. An impulse response is a capture of a mic in front of a very particular part of the amp. So compared to the sound of a cab in a room, it doesn't sound the same. It sounds the same as the sound you would get in a studio.
So yeah, so it's interesting you should mention this. When I first got my 2 Notes Torpedo Live, which is basically a box with the speaker simulation in, I was using it with just like I'd record it with the mic straight up against the grill in the simulation, and live it was so top endy.
Yeah.
It was blowing my brains, and then as soon as I moved the mic more into a room position, when playing live, it suddenly felt more like a real. I don't know if it's the same for the Axe-Fx.
It is
you
completely
put more
the
of
same.
a room simulation, so when you're playing live, it feels a bit more real than the close mic sound.
Absolutely. The interesting thing with impulse responses and convolution technology or speaker simulation is that it almost becomes the most important thing about your tone, because you're changing the speaker, the mic placement, and the preamp that the mic's going into. The preamp having the least effect, if any effect in most cases, because most preamps these days are very transparent if they're good. If I gave you guys a pair of headphones and stuck an SM57 in front of my Laney and then moved the mic around as you would do with impulse responses, I chose where to put the mic. Every single tiny change with the mic would completely change the tone, and I mean completely change the tone. It would be like extreme changes of tone controls on your amp. So impulse responses are the same. You can, the Axe-Fx for instance, or any impulse response technology, which you can by the way use in Logic or Cubase, you don't have to have a hardware unit to do this. And I'm going to give, in a second I'm going to tell you the cheapest way that you can record your amp, which I used to do for years and it sounds fine. So remind me to do that, the cheapest way to record. You can, when you get an impulse response pack, generally like one of the Fractal Cab Labs, it will have 500 impulse responses with it, let's say. And each impulse response is a particular mic, say a Royer R121 in front of the speaker cone at a certain distance and at a certain angle, and then at a certain point along the speaker. Sorry, I don't know why I'm going up and down, along the speaker like this. So from left to right, from the cone outwards to the edge of the speaker. As you move outwards towards the edge of the speaker, the sound gets less top end and gets, anything else you'd describe? Less top end and more distant, I guess. Less aggressive.
Yeah, less aggressive. As you move sideways.
As you move sideways, yeah. As you pull away, you get less bass and more room. Correct?
Yeah.
You get more proximity effect as you move inwards. Yeah. And you can simulate this with impulse responses. So the easiest and cheapest way you can record your guitar, and this is what I used to do, if you have an effects loop on your amplifier, take a cable out of the send on the back of your effects loop. Never ever plug a cable into your speaker out, ever, unless it's going to a speaker. Make sure it's a speaker cable.
It's an expensive mistake to make.
Although if you plug a normal guitar cable into from your speaker out into your speaker, it'll still work, it'll just be noisy as hell, so you need to use speaker wire. A standard guitar jack cable from your send into your sound card, into one of the inputs. What you're doing there is you're recording the preamp. You're not recording the power amp. But if you're like me and you don't use a lot of power amp distortion, this is an absolutely great way of recording if you use lots of preamp distortion. Now, what you can then do is if you get hold of the demo version of 2 Notes Wall of Sound, the demo version works for free. you just get a very limited number of cabs and mics.
I use the ones off the demo, by the way.
There you go.
I have all the sound. I don't know if I should say this, but
Yeah, I do as well. Yeah.
I have all the cabs, but I use the one that comes as standard. So there you go.
It's fantastic. Now, what you can do in Wall of Sound, if you go to Two Notes website, did you already put a link to Two Notes in there?
I'll do it now.
You go to Two Notes website, download their Wall of Sound 3 software. Comes with some speaker simulation, some great cabinets, and some great mics. Then what you can do is switch on the power amp emulation within the software. You can choose a 6L6, 6V6, or any tubes or whatever. Crank up the depth and the presence, and that will give you an awesome tone. Thank you, Troubleshooter, for joining the stream. Thank you for following. That will give you, for no extra money, that if you already have a sound card, you already have an amp, you already have a cable, you need to spend no money and you can record your guitar, and it does sound fantastic. If you go back on my YouTube channel to the early videos when I was using a Mesa Boogie 525 Express, or no, Mesa Boogie Express 525, all of those videos, all the audio was recorded with a cable going out out the effects loop send into the sound card, and then using an impulse response program. Now, I didn't use Wall of Sound because it wasn't available at the time. I used to use Space Designer in Logic, which is a reverb plugin, and I would just load an impulse response into it. So I wasn't even getting the power amp simulation, and it still sounds great. It still sounds fantastic. So if you use Wall of Sound 3, totally free to download. Seeing as I'm kind of bigging up Two Notes because they make such great products, if you want to buy some of the cabs or you want to buy a license, even better, because it's well worth doing because the plugin is amazing. And Wall of Sound lets you move the mic backwards and forwards, up and down, wherever you want to move it against the... And there's a graphical interface for this, by the way, guys, so you just grab the mic and move it.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to tweak any dials or put numbers in. There's EQ controls on there, there's all sorts of things on there. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. If you go on my YouTube channel, Dave Bronze Guitar, then I've done a few demos of it. Or you can just go on the website. It's loads of, but it is brilliant.
Yeah,
easy to use, man.
If I'd thought about it, because I had to wipe my PC when I put Windows 10 on, so I haven't reinstalled it. I should have done that, and I could have shown it to you guys. But maybe I'll do a... Ulrich, thank you for the follow. Thank you so much.
I think this is a record.
It's got to be a record. Yeah, keep this coming, guys. It's great. Yeah, so I will probably do a stream at some point over the next few weeks where I do some live recording and just show you guys how I use. I'll use the Laney, the Reload, and I'll use Wall of Sound, and then I'll just plug. I'll bypass the Reload and just go out the effects send on the effects loop. It's a great way of doing it. So, anything you want to add about that? Any other sneaky tricks or tips you use?
Sneaky tricks or tips for recording electric guitar?
Or even any non-sneaky tips?
Do you find that there's, with things like styles musically and certain processes, there's kind of industry standard ways of doing everything? Not necessarily that you should stick to, but kind of...
For genres?
Well, sort of, or like,
do
you know what I mean? Like certain, like you said.
Yeah, like if you're doing a metal record, then
you kind of do this and then tweak it to how you want it. So there's always like a sort of starting point if you look around, and then you kind of go with that.
I think, yeah, there's certain do's and don'ts, but if you talk to engineers, they vary massively on like what mics they'd use, how they mic it up, and they find, and a lot of that is that trial and error thing that I was talking about. And a lot of the stuff that I found work is just literally where you try and solve a problem.
Yeah,
right.
So, but there are certain things, like things we talked about, certain mics that get you, why is it we have Marshalls, Fenders and that kind of thing? That's because they were there at the start, so they become the industry standard. But in terms of capturing sound, I think, some of it, like the stuff we've talked about today is like to get you started, but a lot of it is just get out there and figure it out,
I mean, you're not going to, as long as you don't start plugging speaker outs into sound cards and stuff like that, you're not going to break anything. So, Phantom Power's 48 volts, there's very little you can do to kill yourself. Although you do have to be a little bit careful.
If you're singing, I've got shock off it.
Yeah. But really, YouTube is your friend, and although, as with everything on YouTube, just be a little bit skeptical as to some of the knowledge, who's giving you the knowledge and how experienced are they. Do a little bit of research, because some people have no idea what they're talking about. Just like with guitar videos on YouTube, sometimes there's a lot of bullshit about.
I honestly really recommend as well, if you can afford it and get part of the record done in a proper studio, you know, it's really worth investing into guys who have proper studios, because like I've learned loads from the guy who did the initial demos for my album, a guy called Mark Minette, call him Dr. Metal. Like just one day in his studio, I learned loads of stuff about loads of tricks, miking up, reamping, and you know, I just asked so many questions. So even though it cost me the money for the day, it saved me money in the long term, because that experience, I've just got it
time as well,
like that. And then what I learned there, I've been able to go back and do it myself. So, you know, getting a proper studio, it really is worth it.
The other thing is, I'll just mention very briefly, is these are really important skills for guitar players these days.
Yeah.
Just as in, you know, we've mentioned this a few times.
I get told off all the time for this.
Yeah, I mean, but I sort of will tell guitar players off is not the right term, but, you know, say it's a good idea to have not just guitar playing skills, but, you know, and recording engineering skills. I mean, not to the point of being that as a living, but, you know, have some skills in this area. Have some skills in Photoshop, in Premiere, in video editing, in photo, you know, designing your own logos, building websites. You know, I build my own website. You know, I learn ActionScript and Flash and various other things because they're useful things. The more skills you have as a guitar player, the less money you have to part with at the end of the day. Self-sufficient. Reserves, I think that's how you pronounce that. Reserves, thank you so much for following the stream. Hope you guys are enjoying. We're not going to be on for very much longer, I'm afraid, so you've followed towards the end of the stream, I apologise. But if anybody obviously missed the beginning of the stream, you can watch it straight afterwards, either on Twitch, or I'll upload it to my YouTube channel as normal. But yeah, this skill set of a guitar player is far wider than just playing guitar these days. Especially if you are somebody who is trying to build their career and is not necessarily having record labels or, you know, promoters or whatever doing things for you. And the skill set that's involved, these things are not that hard to learn, and they're fun to learn. Developing new skills is,
well, yeah, I mean,
if you've got time, of course.
For like a money thing, for instance. I mean, the logo that we put on there, that was literally just a knock-up thing, just, you know, just to sort of stick my name on the side there. But I think I asked a guy about how much would it cost to get a logo, and it was like 250 quid.
I can tell you it's more than that. My logo...
And that was mates' rates, actually, because the guy that...
Well, there you go. I had a company design my logo. My logo was designed by the company who did the... Now, I'm going to say WWF. Now, I mean the animal charity, because I always mistake it with WWE, which is a completely different thing, the wrestling. But the WWF, you know the panda logo for the World Wildlife Fund, if I can say it? Yeah. That logo cost me £680 to have done, and that's just the TQ bit, the Tom Quayle font, and the website logo.
So
that's the logo that's here. So here.
And I have mine's on the T-shirt over there.
Yours is awesome. Who did yours?
A guy called Tom Pitts from Leeds.
Mates Rates?
No, not Mates Rates. I can't remember what it cost, but it was similar price to.
It's not cheap. So if you can do these things yourself.
You said the fonts. Now, did you get given?
No,
the
you
fonts?
don't. No,
right.
You don't get. They design the fonts, but you don't.
I thought you might have got given it as like, you know, like you can.
No, not as a true type font. That would be awesome, actually, but
I
no.
have that.
Oh, you got done.
I did.
Done,
I didn't get as good a deal. That's possibly because I didn't ask for it at the time.
Yeah.
But branding, very important. Logos. I'm not suggesting every guitar player goes out and gets a brand and a logo. That should be the least thing in your mind. If some of the other skills are not things that, you know, if you're still working on your playing and, you know, so these things should be the least from your mind. But recording and developing skills in other areas, they're definitely very important. But yes, I'm just saying about the logo to demonstrate how expensive things can get. You know, if you have somebody design a website for you, it's incredible money. If you need a functional website. Did you do your website?
No, I didn't. Basically, I got the guy who did the logo, did the website design, and then I took it over. So he did the front end, and then I've got another web guy who helps me fix things that I break, basically.
Your job's to break it and call the guy.
To be fair, with WordPress, as you know, it's kind of, you can get something up and running, but I wanted something really unique. So
and your website is very, very nice indeed.
Yeah, thank you.
Very nice. Dan and I are actually working on Dan's website right now, and it's looking pretty good actually. We just need to finish it.
In true like me fashion, I sort of take stuff that you end up doing and like add more like
Yeah.
with guitars. It's like, oh yeah, that's quite nice, but what if I did this to it as well? And it's like
Yeah, I
it's
go
like being
first, and
it's
then
like being the guy
you
in
refine.
the Subway sandwich line, but second in the queue. So you see what someone's got and go, oh, that's quite good, but I'll put that on it.
Yeah.
So like your website is kind of like.
It's an evolution of mine, basically. Yeah.
I think though, we're talking about learning engineering skills and learning about logos thing. I think it's important to get involved in that because then you can communicate what you want.
Yeah,
So, like,
you kind of
you
do
know, if
control
I do-
your own destiny a bit then, you know.
When I went into the studio, even though Dave Bainbridge mixed it and he has just an amazing wealth of experience, I was able to say, oh, okay, no, I need this to be that way, and then if you tried this, if you've done that, and the same when you're live, and same when it comes to website. If you have an idea of design, then you can get. And people prefer it as well. If you can say this is exactly what I want, they're like, oh, it's such a relief to work with somebody.
Absolutely, it makes their job
who
much
didn't just
easier.
say, oh, just
Yeah.
do something, and then you say, oh, that sucks or whatever, you know.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult
Well,
indeed.
that's a slightly different angle. It's a similar thing with if you're trying to, like, if you're trying to communicate something musically to somebody, like if you're doing arrangements and you want somebody to play something a certain way,
Yeah.
if you have no clue what you're doing, and you want them to play a certain way, there's no way you can really communicate that. But if you go, oh, can you play it with some of this or some of this, even if it's like a different instrument, you go, can you play it with more of this in that style, and can you put that on it? It
Yeah, I
kind
mean-
of keeps things moving rather than just saying,
Yeah, the
you know.
more skills you've got, the better. It's not these days just about guitar playing, I'm afraid. Sorry to be the bearer of
Yeah.
bad news, but it's not just about guitar playing. It is about guitar playing. Not even that much. I'd say 85% is about guitar playing, which is a pretty high percentage.
Yeah.
But the 15% is very important in
Well,
terms of
this is-
self-promotion, skills in terms of video editing, being able to
Networking.
record, networking,
Yeah.
social media, massively important.
Business,
And I
video
remember-
editing.
I'd say a year and a half, 2 years ago,
Yeah.
you doing posts and saying to me, I know nothing about this, I've got no idea. That's not the case anymore, is it?
No, you go because as soon as you earn your living from something, you have to get good at it. Otherwise, you don't eat. So you gotta figure it out.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
I think that's a self-employed thing as well. Once
Yeah.
you're self-employed, if you put the effort in, you get the reward,
Yeah,
and so it's very rewarding, even though it's a lot of hard work. And I think that's the thing.
I kind of think it's the ultimate way to earn a living, really. Others may disagree, but I think it's a great way to earn a living. Okay, we've done an hour and 17 minutes on the guitar hour, as usual. So, unless you guys have anything... I've got one thing to say just before we finish. I think Dan knows what it's going to be.
Oh, that could be anything.
Okay. Anything you want to add? Any promotion you want to do?
Any promotion? Come to the Celestial Fire tour.
Well, there we go.
I'm in York, Bilston at the Robin 2, and at Summer's End Festival.
Are there dates on the website?
The dates are on my website, so head over to davebronze.com. I'll put it on the
Just
chat.
going to type it in the chat. Dan, anything?
Just I'm gigging with the Swing Commanders all up and down the place. I'm actually gigging on Sunday at the Hideaway in Streatham, which used to be near Levi's, but he's
He's moved.
a Highlander now.
And the only other thing I'll say is Dan's been a very naughty. I won't reveal, but he's been a very naughty boy
Well,
as far as money goes.
all right.
So we won't reveal yet.
Not
but,
just yet, but I'm sure.
You may be able to guess, but we'll see.
We went to Budapest and we ended up in a Turkish bath with some Hungarians.
Oh my
and,
word.
We did. That's very true. We ended
You know
up
what I mean?
semi-naked in baths with a
once
Hungarian man.
Getting told off by a Hungarian woman for being too loud in a sauna pool, whatever that was.
We were told off for being too loud.
I don't know if you were there. I think you got off, but we.
What was I doing?
I don't know.
But I just want to say, I checked out Dan's lap steel playing. What an amazing musician he is.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's my
Yeah, there's a
part.
video of if you like type in Swing Commanders Twinwood 2015.
Twin Wood.
Twinwood, yeah, it's a festival in. Bedford.
Post it on the Guitar Hour Facebook page.
Yeah, I mean, I should say that the sound on stage, because it was a festival and this changeover was really quick, was pretty awful. You couldn't really hear anything, and I don't use a cab, which I think we've talked about before, so I just come out of a Blackstar head speaker emulation out into the desk. So my only reference is what's coming through the monitors. I guess it would just be the same as if you're using the XFX and no
Yeah,
no camera. But you're not in control of the volume,
Oh,
because it goes to them and then...
well, that's where you go.
You're like, and it always sounds because it's monitors and stuff.
Surely.
It always sounds.
Well, he says he's too loud.
Well, it always
Remarkable,
sounds
I know,
like
but-
really toppy and just it's.
Makes it hard to play.
Yeah, but to be fair, that happens all the time. So
Yep.
it kind of makes you be a little less precious and have a bit more faith. And apparently, it sounded really good up front because you were saying.
Sounds good. Check out the video.
Um,
Great playing. Lap steel. Love it.
On a note about what we've been saying today, I'm going to be getting into like the camera thing and the recording thing and things like that in the future. So, you know, it'd be interesting to talk about my progress, as it were.
Absolutely.
Because I fucking hate technology. You know this.
Okay, so a few logistical things. Anybody who's followed the stream today, if you want to be alerted to when we go live every single time, you need to do two things. You need to verify your email address.
Yeah.
Twitch sends you a link, correct, via email when you sign up. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, but you need to confirm it.
You need to confirm your email address. It could be in your spam folder. If you found it in your spam folder, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah, and I didn't realise. I thought I subscribed and then wondered why I wasn't getting the updates, and had to go looking for it.
Well, that's the point. It's actually, you guys have followed the stream. Now, where it says follow on the stream, you need to click on that, and there's a thing that says receive notifications when we go live. All that means is that you'll get an email as soon as we go live, so if you want to watch the stream, you can do. Otherwise, you'll have to keep an eye on Facebook for whenever we go live. And then the last thing, totally optional, this one obviously, if you like the stream and you want to support the stream and help us to get guests on here and to improve the, we want to do multiple cameras at points, so if Dan's talking, I can switch to Dan and we can do close-ups and stuff. So it's all going back into the stream. There is a donation link underneath the stream if you're on a computer. If you're on a phone or a tablet, you won't see the donation thing.
What if they're watching this on YouTube?
If you're watching it on YouTube afterwards, you need to go to twitch.tv/Tom Quayle, okay, which is where the Twitch guys are right now. Scroll down, it's always there. There's a donation button. If you click on it, if you want to donate, support the stream, we love you, but you don't need to, guys, obviously. The stream, this will always be free. That any donations we've had a couple of very nice donations, so we thank you greatly for that. That money goes into a PayPal account and we use it to... Thank you, William George. We'll use that money to plough back into the Guitar Hour. So Dan and I are not going out and eating KFC or
Definitely
Nando's on that money. We
I know a lot
are.
of guys that do donations on podcasts say, you know, if you like it and you watch one, even if it's like £1, £1,
Absolutely.
or
Anything.
$1 per one that you watch, you know. So there's a lot, there's a lot of information and stuff in there.
All it will mean is the Guitar Hour gets better and better and better, and we would like to get some guests on here as well. I've already shot an interview with John Gom for you guys, which we're going to play at some point, which is really cool. John really does a great interview. We'd like to get, if we can, like, if Andy Timmons comes over, for instance, get Andy Timmons in my studio, which would be awesome. Imagine that kind of thing, guys. If you want to, if we have a budget for it, we'll be able to do it. If we don't, we won't. It's entirely up to you guys. If you're happy to hear us talk for the next 6 years, that's absolutely fine. But feel free if you want to donate. That would be marvellous. We would love you forever. So check that out underneath the stream. Thank you so much for watching. As ever, we really hope you've enjoyed today's Guitar Hour. And I'm not sure when we'll be back. Probably next week or the week after, depending on what you guys are doing, because you're very busy. Thank you again, and we will see you soon. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.